Chapter 2451. However, just as they took the valuable items from the demonic cultivator's body, before they could hand them over to their uncle master, the green-robed man had already arrived in front of them. His fair and slender palm was also spread out in front of them. What are you doing? The two of them were stunned and could not react in time. Hand them over. These are my spoils of war. Fengjiu said matter-of-factly as he pointed to the treasures in their hands. Although she had quite a lot of treasures, she would not complain about having too much of these things that she had earned herself. Ah! The two of them were stunned. Ah, what? Could it be that you want to keep them for yourselves? She narrowed her eyes, but there was a trace of a smile on her face. However, this smile looked so dangerous in the eyes of the two people. We wouldn't dare. The two disciples hurriedly said as they handed over all the treasures they had obtained from the demonic cultivators. Thank you for saving us, sir. There's more here. The two uncle masters also came to Fengjiu's side and bowed before handing over the items to him. Fengjiu looked at him and smiled. He kept the space ring and Qiankuan bag in his hands before saying, "Hurry up and go back." As he spoke, he walked towards the array in front of him and prepared to collect the items from the demonic cultivators. "Sir!" the middle-aged man shouted. However, seeing that he did not stop, he brought the two disciples and followed him. On the other side, the disciples who had hurried back to the sect were led by their master to the mountain peak where the sect master was. In the mountain peak, the sect master of the Nebula Immortal sect was discussing something with Hunyuanzi and a few other sect masters. Seeing the peak master bring a few disciples in anxiously, the sect master asked, "What's wrong?" The others also turned their heads and looked at the group of people who had just entered. "Greetings, sect master and immortal monarchs." The peak master bowed to the few of them before saying, "Sect master, the sect protecting array around our Nebula Immortal sect has already been activated. Logically speaking, devil cultivators shouldn't have been able to enter, but my disciples were patrolling today and encountered devil cultivator. I'm afraid that one of the mountain passes has been broken through." He paused for a moment before continuing. After encountering the demonic cultivators, junior brother Yang and two other disciples, who were leading the team, blocked the demonic cultivators' attacks, allowing them to escape and report back. When I heard the news, I asked the two peak masters to lead people to rescue them. However, the demonic cultivators have broken through. We have to find the entrance to the mountain as soon as possible, otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable. There are 3 people there. The sect leader was deep in thought. He shook his head and looked at the disciples behind the peak master. He sighed softly. From the moment they rushed back to report the news to the moment the 2 peak masters went to rescue them, I'm afraid that the 3 of them are most likely dead. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Indeed, the time taken for this round trip was not short and there were only 3 people left. Furthermore, they had to deal with such a powerful demonic cultivator. It was likely that even if the 2 peak masters had gone to rescue them, it would be too late. Especially those disciples, when they heard this, they all lowered their heads. They also knew that even if the sect sent people to rescue them, it would be too late. Martial uncle and those 2 senior brothers, they were afraid. Chapter 2452. Hunyuanzi was startled. He stroked his beard and looked at the disciple, asking, "Who asked you to bring a message to the old man?" "What message did he bring?" "It was a man we met in the forest. He said he told the immortal monarch that he was here." The disciple said, confused. Hunyuanzi was stunned for a moment. He immediately thought of Fengjiu and asked, "Is he very good-looking? Is he wearing green or red?" "He is more beautiful than a woman. He is wearing green," the disciple said. Hunyuanzi smiled. "So he is with your uncle master and 2 senior brothers?" "Yes." As the disciple spoke, he added, "That person is very strong. When we left, he even sent us on our way. With just a flick of his sleeve, we were sent dozens of meters away." Hearing this, the immortal monarchs were surprised and looked at each other. Sent them dozens of meters away with a flick of his sleeve. This person's strength was not to be underestimated. The sect master looked at Hunyuanzi and asked, "Do you know this person?" "Ha, I know. If I am not wrong, it should be Fingzhou." Hunyuanzi smiled and stroked his beard. "With her there, those disciples will not be in danger. Don't worry." "So it is the ghost Dr. Fingzhou." The sect master was startled and asked, "So she has arrived at the Nebula Immortal sect?" "She should be here." Hunyuanzi nodded. When the Peak Master and the disciples heard this, they were slightly surprised, especially the disciples. They had seen with their own eyes that the azure-robed young man's actions were natural and unrestrained, without the slightest shyness of a woman. Such a noble young master with an extraordinary bearing and unfathomable strength was actually a woman. Since the Hunyuanzi immortal monarch said it himself, it should not be wrong. If that was the case, then their Sherbu and 2 senior brothers should not be in danger. "You all can leave now. Take some people to see which entrance was broken through." The sect master ordered the Peak Master. Meanwhile, the Peak leader collected his thoughts and recalled something. "There's one more thing." His voice paused as he looked at the sect master and said, "The disciples have reported that there are suddenly many formations and barriers around the Nebula Immortal sect. However, as far as I know, no one from our sect has set up any formations." Hunyuan narrowed his eyes, stroked his beard and said, "It should have been set up by Fingzhou. She might have already arrived in the area of the Nebula Immortal sect, but she didn't come up because she was setting up the array. I'll ask her about it when I see her." The sect master nodded and said, "Leave this matter to the immortal monarch." "You may leave." "Yes." At this moment, the Peak Master bowed respectfully before withdrawing. After they left, Hunyuanzi stood up and said to the sect master and several elders, "Since Fingzhou is here, I will go to the mountain gate to wait for her. When she arrives, I will bring her here." "Okay." The sect master and the others replied and watched him leave. On the other side, in the forest, the 3 people behind Fingzhou watched him enter the array and plunder a pile of things. He then walked out and sat under a tree to check them one by one. Chapter 24:53. Fengjiu glanced at them and kept the items in her space as she said, "You can just call me 9th Young Master." Hearing this, the 3 of them were slightly startled. Then, they called out, "9th Young Master, thank you for saving our lives." After putting away the items, she stood up and patted her robe. Then, she said to the 3 of them, "Since there are demon cultivators here, there must be more than one team. You should return to the faction first. I still want to take a look around." Seeing this, the middle-aged man hurriedly said, "9th Young Master, can we follow you?" "Follow you?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. "It's like this. We were sent by the faction to patrol. Now that something like this has happened, how can we hide in the faction? Since you want to take a look around the forest, we want to follow you. If you encounter any demon cultivators, we might be able to help you." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, "That's fine. You can follow me if you want. But let me say this first. If you kill any demon cultivators, all the items are mine." "Of course. We wouldn't dare to fight with you, 9th Young Master," they hurriedly replied. "Let's go," she said, and strode forward. The 3 people behind her also quickly followed. When the previous disciple brought the 2 Peak Masters here, all they saw were the corpses of demon cultivators. As for their Uncle Master and the others, they didn't even see them. That's strange. Why aren't they here? Uncle Master and the others were here before. Look, there are still corpses of demon cultivators on the ground. Could they have gone somewhere else? A disciple said as he looked at the corpses on the ground. When he saw that the demon cultivators with higher cultivations had died in a single blow, he couldn't help but be stunned. That's a one-hit kill. This is a strong fighter at the peak of the fairy realm. How could he have been killed in a single blow? The two peak masters went forward to take a look. They frowned and said, he was killed by an air current that penetrated his heart meridian. This demon cultivator's eyes were wide open before he died, and his face was full of disbelief. It's obvious that he was killed by an insignificant person. The two peak masters paused for a moment, then looked at each other and said, moreover, with junior brother Yang's power, he shouldn't have been able to kill a peak fairy realm expert with a single strike. So, it must have been an expert who saved them. Expert? One of the disciples was startled. Suddenly, he slapped his head and said, I know. It must be that green-robed man. That person is very strong. He only used a wave of his strength to send us dozens of meters away. Hearing this, the two peak masters were slightly startled. Oh. There's actually such a person. That disciple looked around and said, there are only corpses of devil cultivators here. I don't see Martial Uncle, two junior brothers, and that green-robed man. They should still be alive, but have left. Could they have returned to the sect first? Since that's the case, the two of you should return to the sect and take a look first. We'll go and check where the gap that the demonic cultivator broke through is located. The two peak lords instructed. Yes. The two disciples responded and quickly went back. Let's go. Let's go this way. The two peak masters led their people and left, heading in another direction, on a mountain path that led to the Nebula Immortal sect. Feng Yi and Yang Yang followed the people from the Thunderfire mercenary team through the mountain path and entered a forest. After climbing over a mountain, they stopped at a place in the forest. Chapter 2454. We haven't met any demonic cultivators along the way. Feng Yi said, could it be that the demonic cultivators are walking on a different path from us? No matter what, it's not suitable to use sword kinesis flight in this area. Let's eat something and continue on our way. He said to the two of them, then walked over to his team members and said a few words. Feng Yi and Yang Yang sat next to each other. Zhao Yang took out some dry rations and handed it to him. Eat some. I'm not hungry. Feng Yi shook his head. He didn't want to eat. Then eat some fruit. He put away the dry rations and handed him a spirit fruit. Climbing the mountain was already tiring, and his mouth was dry. Now that a spirit fruit was in front of him, Feng Yi smiled happily and took a bite. Yang Yang, didn't we already finish this fruit? There's only one left. Zhao Yang said as he took out some water to drink. These spirit fruits were given to them by their master. Before they went down the mountain, he specially took some and put them in his space. Along the way, there was only one fruit left. They sat down quietly to rest. Faintly, they seemed to hear the roars of ferocious beasts in the mountain forest. Su Yan ordered people to be on guard and pay attention to their surroundings. Feng Yi and Zhao Yang took a short nap after eating to catch up on sleep. The sun shone in the sky. Under Su Yan's command, they continued on their way. However, after passing through a mountain forest, they suddenly heard the sound of battle. Hold your breath and don't make any noise. Su Yan gestured and brought someone forward to check. When they came to a place in front of them, they saw that a team of demonic cultivators had encountered a pack of wolves. The ground was littered with wolf corpses, and the smell of blood was very strong. Wolf howls could be heard from time to time. When he saw this scene, he made a hand gesture and quietly retreated. The demonic cultivators were very strong. There were only a few wolves left in the pack of 20 to 30. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't be able to leave if they were discovered. However, unexpectedly, when they retreated, the team member beside him accidentally stepped on a branch in the weeds, making a cracking sound. That team member stiffened and instinctively looked in the direction of the battle. When he saw that no one was paying attention to them, he secretly sighed in relief. Su Yan's expression became serious. He put a hand on that team member's shoulder and said in a low voice, "Let's go." He quickly retreated with him to where Feng Yi and the others were resting. He immediately said, "Let's go. There are demonic cultivators in front." When everyone heard this, they quickly stood up and prepared to leave. However, just as they were about to leave, they saw a few devil cultivators appear out of nowhere and surround them, trapping them. Pfft. And I was wondering who it was. So it's a team of mercenaries and 2 brats. A devil cultivator sneered and glanced at them with disdain, looking very disgusted. What's the point? Kill Tess, Su, S Susasis, TTSSS. Protect the 2 children and leave. Su Yan shouted and quickly split into 2 teams. One team entangled with the demonic cultivators, while the other team protected Feng Yi and Zhao Yang as they retreated. Chapter 24:55. However, on a mountain peak not far from here, a man sitting cross-legged on a rock saw the scene of the devil cultivators dealing with the mercenaries and the 2 children. Thus, he took out a flute from his waist and started playing. A leisurely tune drifted out along with the rise and fall of his fingers. The sound of the flute was as clear and pleasant as pearls falling on a jade plate, and as slow as flowing water in a stream. However, the tune did not sound like an ordinary tune. When they heard the tune that suddenly spread out in the air, the devil cultivators and the injured mercenaries below could not help but be startled. How could someone play a flute in such a place? They could not help but stop their attacks and try to find the person playing the flute. However, the flute sound drifted in the air and echoed in the sky, but they could not find it. Faintly, they suddenly felt the ground tremble, as if something heavy was stepping on it. Just as they were stunned, they heard the roars of fierce beasts in the forest. Why are there fierce beasts in this area? A devil cultivator turned his head and looked around in astonishment. Listening to the sound, it was indeed the sound of fierce beasts, because the roars carried the pressure of fierce beasts, so it was naturally different from ordinary fierce beasts. From the sound of it, there seems to be quite a few. Another devil cultivator said and could not help but frown. Don't worry about it. Kill them first. Feng Yi and Zhao Yang were both protected, and only had small wounds on their bodies from the airflow. However, Su Yan and his team members were different. All of them were covered in blood, and even though they were slashed horizontally and vertically, none of them fell down. Feng Yi and Zhao Yang could not help but worry. They did not expect that the group of devil cultivators would kill them without a word. It seemed that they would not be able to escape today. However, at this moment, the roars of the ferocious beasts were getting closer and closer. Even the devil cultivators could not ignore them. Suddenly, a ferocious beast darted out of nowhere and pounced on a devil cultivator like a tiger pouncing on its prey. It opened its bloodthirsty mouth and bit off the devil cultivator's neck. Blood spurted out like a fountain and splashed onto the people beside him. Ah! Fierce beasts! Another demonic cultivator exclaimed. Immediately after, more than a dozen fierce beasts pounced over, catching them and tearing them apart. Other than these blind fierce beasts, another group rushed over from behind. In a moment, everyone was surrounded. Even those demonic cultivators who wanted to kill the Thunderfire mercenaries and the others couldn't divert their attention. They could only focus on dealing with those fierce beasts first. Protect them and leave first. Su Yan shouted, ignoring the blood on his body. He protected Feng Yi and Zhao Yang. However, he soon discovered that the ferocious beasts were only attacking the demonic cultivators. They didn't even bother to look at them. Especially when the ferocious beasts passed by them, they didn't attack them even though they were so close. Why aren't these beasts attacking us? The mercenaries were slightly startled. They all felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. They had never encountered such a situation before. Chapter 2456. Hearing the word, subdued beast, a hint of surprise flashed across Su Yan's eyes. It was actually a subdued beast. That's right, if it wasn't a subdued beast, who could control these bloodthirsty and ferocious beasts to only attack the demonic cultivators and not them? But who exactly was the person controlling the beasts? Who was helping them? A huge white crane flapped its wings and landed on the mountain peak. Beside the flute-playing man, the man stood up and lightly jumped onto the white crane, then flew into the air. Following the appearance of the white crane, the man on top of it also appeared before the eyes of the crowd below. Kill that person controlling the beasts. A demonic cultivator, his body stained with blood, shouted in a gloomy voice. Following his shout, 2 demonic cultivators raised their swords and flew into the air. However, just as the 2 demonic cultivators were flying towards the man on the white crane, a huge eagle suddenly flew out with a screech and crashed into one of the demonic cultivators with a swoop of its claws. With a swipe of its claws, the other demonic cultivator was caught and torn apart. In an instant, a blood-curdling scream rang out, and mangled flesh and blood flew down from the sky. Hiss. He can even subdue divine beasts. Where did this beast master come from? The demonic cultivators below watched as the eagle tore apart a demonic cultivator and knocked the other one away, causing him to fall to the ground like a kite with its string cut. Seeing this extremely impactful scene, they felt their hearts tremble. Retreat! Quickly retreat! A demonic cultivator screamed. Seeing that more and more demonic cultivators were dying under the attacks of the ferocious beasts, he could only shout for the demonic cultivators who were still alive to quickly retreat. After receiving the order to retreat, the demonic cultivators quickly fled in a sorry state, while the ferocious beasts roared and chased after them. The eagle in the sky screeched and circled around the white crane, while the man on the white crane stopped less than 10 meters above Feng Ye's head. What do you do? Why are you moving around in this area? The man on the white crane asked, sizing up the strange group below in astonishment. A group of mercenaries with average strength, bringing along 2 delicate-looking children. This group was indeed strange. You are a beast tamer. Feng Yi blinked his bright eyes and looked curiously at the man sitting on the white crane. What's your name? How are you so powerful? Young master. Su Yan endured the injuries on his body and glanced at Feng Yi, indicating that he shouldn't be rude. At this moment, he stepped forward and cupped his fists. Thank you for saving us, young master. We're mercenaries of the Thunderfire mercenary group, and we're escorting these 2 young masters to the Nebula Immortal sect. We didn't expect to encounter a devil cultivator here. This could be considered as an answer to the man's question from before. Oh. You want to go to the Nebula Immortal sect? The man sitting on the white crane looked at Feng Yi and Zhao Yang. He couldn't help but look at Feng Yi for a while. He felt that the look between the eyebrows of this little child was somewhat familiar. And, we're going to the Nebula Immortal sect. However, I heard that the Nebula Immortal sect has already activated the mountain ceiling array. I don't think we can go up, so I want to find a high place where we can see the battle between the people of the Nebula Immortal sect and the demons. Feng Yi smiled and squinted his eyes as he spoke. His gaze shifted and landed on the eagle. He was thinking that if he could sit on the eagle, he would definitely be able to see the scene of his niece fighting with the demons. Chapter 2457. What's your name? The man asked. Xiao Yi. Feng Yi said with a smile. Do you want to sit on Old Eagle? He asked with a smile. He felt that this child's smile was very similar to someone else's. Moreover, the more he looked at him, the more he felt that he resembled that person. Yes. Feng Yi answered without thinking. Little Lord. Su Yan called out to him. Hearing Su Yan's voice, Feng Yi turned around to look at him. Seeing that they were all injured, he said, bandage your wounds first. Seeing this, Su Yan instructed the group behind him to rest on the spot and bandage the injuries on their bodies. Leader, Sheng and Nan's injuries aren't light. I'm afraid. One of the team members came to Su Yan's side. Covered in blood, he couldn't hide the worry on his face. Hearing this, Su Yan was stunned. He quickly turned around to look at the two of them. Only then did he see that the two team members were being supported to sit at the side to rest. One of them was holding the wound on his chest in an attempt to stop the bleeding. However, the blood kept gushing out from his hand, dyeing his mercenary uniform a bloody red. His face also became increasingly pale from the excessive blood loss. Meanwhile, the other person's mouth was overflowing with blood. It seemed that the injury was internal. His breathing was also a little weak. It looked like he would die at any moment if he couldn't catch his breath. Didn't we prepare medicine? Quickly stop Sheng's bleeding. Give the medicine for internal injuries to Nan. Su Yan hurriedly said and had them give the medicine to the two of them. The medicine for stopping the bleeding isn't effective. There's too much blood gushing out. The medicine for stopping the bleeding was washed away as soon as it was sprinkled. It can't stop the bleeding at all. Give the medicine for internal injuries to Nan as well. However, the effect seems to be. The mercenary's eyes couldn't help but redden as he spoke. Although there weren't many people in this team, every one of them was a brother who had gone through fire and water together. Seeing two of their brothers injured to such an extent, as if they were going to die at any moment, their hearts ached. It was very uncomfortable. If they died, how would their family be able to bear it? Their family was still waiting for them to return, but now, because their lives were hanging by a thread, the pills and other things they had on them could not save them. For a moment, the atmosphere became gloomy, and a sorrowful atmosphere filled the air. They were powerless to save them and could only watch as the two of them breathed their last in front of them. This feeling of despair made the bloodied men's eyes turn red. I have medicine to stop the bleeding and an inner core to treat internal injuries. As Feng Yi spoke, he took out 2 bottles from the space and handed them to Su Yan. This is to stop the bleeding. Pour some on the wound and the bleeding will stop soon. The other bottle contains the nidin. It seems that there is only one left. Give it to him. Thank you, young master. However, it's useless. One of them is injured in the main artery, and the bleeding can't be stopped. The other has serious internal injuries, and an ordinary inner core is useless. Su Yanwan thanked him for his kindness because he knew that their injuries were extraordinary. Even if a golden immortal came here, he wouldn't be able to save them. Chapter 2458. He took off his coat, revealing the hideous wound on his chest caused by a sword. Blood was still gushing out from the wound, and because of the excessive blood loss, the mercenary had already fainted and was being supported by another person. Feng Yi saw Yi, twisted open the cap, and poured the hemostatic medicine on the wound. He poured out a lot, and in an instant, the hemostatic medicine covered the wound. For a moment, the blood did not gush out. Following that, he poured some into his palm and pressed it together with his palm on the wound. Everyone watched, and for a moment, did not speak. They only felt their hearts in their mouths. When they saw that as time passed, the small palm pressing on the chest did not seep out any blood, they could not help but widen their eyes, revealing an expression of disbelief. How is this possible? That hemostatic medicine actually stopped the bleeding. They were all people who lived on the edge of a knife, and naturally knew that this wound had injured the main artery, and the amount of blood gushing out was huge. Even if medicine was poured down, it would not be able to stop it. With this kind of injury, there was an 80 to 90% chance of death, but they did not expect. Feng Yi pressed on that person's chest, did not speak, and only stared at his palm. After a while, he withdrew his hand, only to see that the bleeding wound had been stopped by the hemostatic medicine, and there was no more blood gushing out. When the small child saw this, he could not help but smile proudly at the mercenaries. How is it? I told you that this hemostatic medicine is very powerful, right? His niece was the ghost doctor, very powerful. He had tried this medicine before, and it was really very useful. If it were not for this group of mercenaries risking their lives to protect them, he would not bear to take it out. In mid-air, the man sitting on the white crane looked down at the scene below, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Especially when he looked at the familiar bottle reflecting the sunlight, and then looked at the child, his expression became more and more strange. If he remembered correctly, that bottle seemed to be Fengjiu's. Her bottle was different from ordinary medicine bottles, and was very recognizable. But how could such a small child hold Fengjiu's hemostatic medicine? And he even said that this medicine was refined by his niece. Such a powerful hemostatic medicine was clearly refined by Fengjiu, okay? Captain, it's really stopped. A mercenary said in disbelief. Su Yan's heart trembled. He looked deeply at Feng Yi, and cupped his hands. Young master, please save them. Feng Yi's hand was stained with blood, so he handed the bottle in his hand. You feed them yourself. I want to wash my hands. As he spoke, he turned around and ran to Zhao Yang. Yang, my hands are covered in blood. I want to wash my hands. Zhao Yang silently took out a water bag from the space and poured some water for him to wash his hands. Seeing that there were some small wounds on his body caused by Qi Gang, he said, Master, you are also injured. Let me help you apply some medicine first. His mouth, Fengjiu, Feng Yi's, Feng Yi, Feng, his, I, and now, it, by the pain, the corner of the man's mouth twitched. He patted the white crane lightly and descended from the sky. He walked to Feng Yi's side and stared at him. It's just a flesh wound on your body. You'll be fine after applying medicine. It won't hurt to death. Who said that? Pain can kill people. Otherwise, why would people talk about pain? Chapter 24:59. Zhao Yang helped Feng Yi apply the medicine and bandaged the wound. He heard Feng Yi gasping and shouting that it hurt so much. The man on the side couldn't help laughing when he saw that. On the other side, Su Yan's eyes narrowed slightly when he poured the pill. It was because the pill was a 5th-level internal elixir. The price of a 5th-level internal elixir was not something they could afford. Even he had never seen such an elixir before. His hand holding the elixir trembled slightly. He fed the elixir to the team member and gave him some water to drink. Then, he watched quietly from the side. As time passed, the elixir took effect. Whether it was the team member who stopped the bleeding or the team member who took the internal elixir, their breaths gradually stabilized. Seeing this, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Hearing the child's words not far behind him, he turned around to look. Feng Yi wrinkled his delicate little face and looked at the bandage on his arm. He said with slight dissatisfaction, Yang, why did you tie it so ugly? You should have tied a bow at the end of the knot. Xiao Yang's little face was still cold. After hearing his words, he said with a serious face, Master, you are a man, not a woman. You don't need to tie a bow. But a bow looks good. I am so good-looking, but you bandaged me so ugly. He looked at the bandage on his arm with disgust. Put on the coat. Even the bow can't be seen. Xiao Yang said and handed the coat to him. Feng Yi sighed with a mischievous look. When I see my niece, I will ask her to arrange a considerate and beautiful sister to take care of me. The man on the side couldn't help but laugh and asked, a sister is a sister. Why does it have to be considerate and beautiful? Feng Yi looked up at him and said with a serious face, of course it's because I am good-looking. Then the sister who takes care of me must be beautiful and good-looking. Moreover, if she is considerate, she won't be like Yang Yang. I asked for a bow, but she tied a dead knot for me. You're so young, how can you have a niece? Who's your niece? He squinted his eyes with a smile, and a glint flashed across his eyes. You didn't tell me who you are, so I'm not going to tell you who my niece is. He pouted, looking like he didn't want to say anything. Haha, the man chuckled and said, I'm Bai Xiao, a beast tamer. Don't you already know that? Oh, Bai Xiao. He tilted his head and thought for a moment, then said, Bai Xiao. Why do you sound like Little White? After hearing Bai Xiao's words, Xiao Yang was stunned for a moment. He stared at him for a long time, but no one knew what he was thinking. Hearing his words, Bai Xiao smiled. There was once a person who called me Xiao Bai. By the way, you haven't told me your niece's name. My niece. My niece is called Niece. Feng Yi looked at him as if he was an idiot. Didn't I always say it? She's called Niece. Hearing this, Bai Xiao was stunned for a moment, then he laughed softly. He looked at the child in front of him and asked in a different way, Then let me ask you, where did you get the medicine you gave them just now? Don't tell me it was made by your niece. The person who made this medicine is my friend. Chapter 2460. That's right. She's my friend. Bai Xiao replied with a smile. She glanced at the two of them and said, Moreover, she will also come to the battle between the demons and the Nebula Immortal sect. Feng Yi and Xiao Yang looked at each other. Xiao Yang was silent, as if he was thinking about something. Feng Yi looked at Bai Xiao and said, How come I don't know that she has a friend like you? This question was a little strange. But he still looked at him, wanting to know how he would answer. When Bai Xiao heard this, she touched her smooth chin and said, It's not strange that you don't know. You don't even know her, so how can you know her friend? I know her, but I don't know you. Feng Yi tilted his head and said. At this moment, Xiao Yang raised his head and looked at the person in front of him. He asked, You don't know that she has a horse with her? Do you know how this horse came about? Hearing this, Bai Xiao was startled. She could not help but look carefully at Xiao Yang and then at Feng Yi. She said seriously, That horse is a mutated dragon horse called Old Bai. I gave it to Fingzhou. Why? Do you know? Feng Yi and Xiao Yang looked at each other and grinned at the same time. They stepped forward and pulled on her sleeve. We know, we know. Seeing that the two children suddenly seemed to be close to her, Bai Xiao was a little confused. She only asked, Who are you? Do you really know Fingzhou? Su Yan, who was not far away, heard their words and could not help but be startled. Fingzhou. Wasn't this the ghost Dr. Fingzhou? It was rumored that this person's talent in alchemy was heaven-defying, and he had medical skills that could bring the dead back to life. Moreover, he was called the Star of the Phoenix. These two children actually knew such a person. Thinking of the pills they took out and hearing their words, his heart could not help but jump. Could it be that they really knew each other? "I'm her uncle," Feng Yi said with a smile. He was very happy to finally meet his niece's friend. "It's little uncle," Xiao Yang added. Hearing this, Bai Xiao was slightly startled. He looked at Feng Yi in front of him and asked hesitantly, "You're Feng Yi?" "Yes." He nodded and pointed at Yang Yang beside him. "He's Xiao Yang." Su, who was not far behind them, heard this. It turned out that the two children were still on guard against them and did not tell them their real names. However, it was also true. There were fewer surnames of Feng. If he said that his surname was Feng, they would probably guess his relationship with Feng Jiu. Bai Xiao was shocked, and his face was also filled with astonishment. "But, as far as I know, didn't you already back then, when the Phoenix dynasty was in trouble, he also knew about it. At that time, he heard that many Phoenix guards had died, and grandfather Feng Jiu's child, Feng Yi, had also been killed. How could he still be alive? Even Feng Jiu did not know about this. We were rescued at that time and have been cultivating on the mountain. This time, because we knew that the Devil Clan was going to attack the righteous sects, we snuck down the mountain when Master wasn't paying attention," Xiao Yang said. "Then what's with these mercenaries?" Bai Xiao pointed at Su Yan and the others. He put 2 fingers to his lips and blew a whistle. The eagle flapped its wings and landed on the ground, lowering its body and head. When he saw this scene, Feng Yi smiled happily. He quickly walked forward and reached out to touch the eagle's feathers. He praised sincerely, "So beautiful." Chapter 2462. Bai Xiao glanced at Xiao Yang and said with a smile, "Let's go up." Hearing this, Xiao Yang nodded, then jumped up and sat behind Feng Yi. After Bai Xiao saw that the two of them were seated, she jumped onto the back of the white crane and led the two of them towards the territory of the Nebula Immortal Sect. On the other side, Feng Jiu was wandering around the forest. She was not in a hurry to go to the Nebula Immortal Sect. Instead, she was walking around the forest. Behind her were the 3 disciples of the sect. When some unlucky devil cultivators met them, they thought that it was a fat piece of meat that had been delivered to their mouths. However, who would have thought that in the end, they would all be destroyed by Feng Jiu, and the valuable items on their bodies would naturally fall into Feng Jiu's hands. The 3 people from the immortal sect watched as the young man once again put away the treasures and felt that it was inconceivable. The treasures had all fallen into the young man's hands. There were so many of them that even they couldn't help but be moved when they saw them. It wasn't just 1 or 2 or 10 or 9 treasures. If the treasures that had been taken by the young man were to be piled up in front of them, it would be like a small mountain of treasures. However, they wouldn't be able to obtain a single one of those treasures. Hearing Feng Jiu's words, the 3 of them hurriedly waved their hands and smiled embarrassedly. No, this is what the young master deserves. We don't dare to have such thoughts." Hearing this, Feng Jiu made an "oh" sound and said, "Is that so? I was thinking that if you guys want it, I can give you 1 or 2 of them." As soon as these words were spoken, the 3 of them froze. Looking at the young man's words, they felt that they had spoken too early. If they were to change their words now, wouldn't they be too shameless? Thinking that those things were all precious artifacts and treasures, they secretly gritted their teeth. If they were to lose face, then so be it. If they were shameless, then so be it. If they could get those things with just a few words, why should they be too reserved? Thus, they opened their mouths and were about to say that they wanted it when they heard the young man's regretful voice. "Sigh, since you don't want it, then I won't force you." As Feng Jiu spoke, he took out the artifacts and treasures from the space and played with them for a while before putting them away. Seeing this, the three people's mouths twitched. Why did they feel like they had been played? Suppressing that strange feeling, the middle-aged man asked, "Ninth young master, when are you going to the sect?" They had accompanied him for a long time, but he didn't seem to be going to the sect, so they couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Perhaps the people from the sect thought they were in some kind of danger. What's the rush? That devil lord hadn't appeared yet. If he went to the sect now, wouldn't he have nothing to do? It's better to walk around here and see if we can find anything. Feng Zhou said unhurriedly as she took out a wine gourd from the space and took a sip. Looking at his leisurely appearance, the middle-aged man didn't say anything else. He only sighed in his heart and continued to follow beside him. However, at this moment, on the other side, the demon lord of the demons was personally leading the demonic cultivators to besiege the Nebula Immortal sect. In addition to the demonic cultivators below, the demonic cultivators in the sky were standing on their swords or artifacts. They stood in the air, their black robes fluttering in the wind, making whistling sounds. Chapter 2463. When the disciples of the Nebula Immortal sect saw the demonic cultivators appear in the sky, led by the demon master of the demons, the expressions of the disciples of the Nebula Immortal sect changed drastically. They quickly ran inside and reported the situation outside to their master and the elders of the sect. At the same time, they quickly prepared for battle. The cultivators of the Nebula Immortal sect who were peak masters and above all rushed to the sect master's mountain. "Sect master, something bad has happened. The demon master of the demons has personally led an army of demonic cultivators to besiege our Nebula Immortal sect. Now, they have completely surrounded us. Our disciples can't get out." One of the peak masters said anxiously. The demon master has also set up a powerful enchantment in the sky. In the sky, in front of the sect, there are sounds of killing. "Sect master, what should we do now?" "Sect master, please make a decision." Hearing this, the sect master of the Nebula Immortal sect frowned. He asked in a deep voice, "Didn't the Hunyuan Immortal Lord go outside the sect? Didn't you see him? You said that the demons have surrounded the sect and set up an enchantment in the sky. Then, where did the Hunyuan Immortal Lord go?" Previously, the Hunyuan Immortal Lord said that he was going to pick up Fengzhou. It had been some time since he left. Why hadn't he returned yet? The peak masters were stunned and said, "No, the Hunyuan Immortal Lord is not outside the sect. He is not outside the sect." Hearing this, the sect master's face darkened. He frowned and thought, could it be that the Hunyuan Immortal Lord went into the forest to look for the ghost Dr. Fengzhou? Otherwise, why didn't I see him outside? On the other side, the Hunyuan Immortal Lord had indeed entered the forest to look for Fengzhou. However, he didn't expect that when he entered the forest to look for Fengzhou, he would see demonic cultivators surrounding the sect. Seeing that the situation was getting worse, he felt that he should find Fengzhou first. However, he didn't expect that in the forest, he didn't meet Fengzhou and the other disciples of the sect. Instead, he was ambushed by demonic cultivators. After dealing with the devil cultivator who had ambushed him, he cursed under his breath, "Where did that damned girl run off to? You actually didn't enter the immortal sect even though you're here. I've been looking for you here for half a day and I still haven't seen you." As he spoke, he heard the faint sounds of battle coming from the front. He lightened his footsteps and rushed forward to check. When he saw the familiar green figure, he couldn't help but reveal a big smile on his face. "Fengzhou. It's great that you're here. I've been looking for you for a long time." He quickly ran over and helped deal with the devil cultivators that were besieging them. His speed was as fast as a ghost, so fast that it was inconceivable. Hearing the old man's voice, Feng Jiu turned around and saw him dashing out like a bolt of lightning, instantly killing those demonic cultivators. One by one, the corpses fell to the ground with a bang after blood splattered out. She raised her eyebrows and looked at him. "Why are you here? You still have the nerve to ask me. You don't even know that something big has happened. The people of the demon clan have already surrounded the sect. I originally heard that you were in the forest, but after waiting outside the sect for a long time, I didn't see you come over, so I entered the forest to look for you. I didn't expect that the moment I entered the forest, I would be ambushed by the devil cultivator." Was it really a good idea to continue waiting like this? Would he miss the best opportunity to fight? The longer this dragged on, the greater the prestige of the devil cultivators. At that time, even before the battle, the disciples of the sect would be so scared that their faces turned pale. They wouldn't even have the courage to fight. They were discussing in the forest when they suddenly heard a loud rumbling sound. The devil cultivators broke through the gate of the immortal sect and rushed in. Their bloodthirsty screams rang out in different pitches. In the sect, the disciples cried out in alarm and retreated step by step. Hearing the commotion from the sect, Feng Jiu rose into the air. Her figure flew up and into the air. Her gaze swept across the air as if she was looking for something. When she saw the floating land slowly flying over from not far away, her eyes lit up. Chapter 2465. However, the moment she flew up into the air, the clan leader, who was standing above the sect, saw her. That figure was so inconspicuous. His green robes seemed to blend into the forest below. However, that person's aura and pressure were as dazzling as the stars and moon in the sky. Who is that? The demon master stared at the green figure that was still some distance away from him as he asked the demonic cultivator beside him. The demonic cultivator beside him was one of the 10 demons. When he heard the demon master's words, he followed his gaze. When he saw the green figure in the sky, a look of deep thought flashed across his eyes. He's a little far away, so I can't see his appearance clearly. I'll go over and take a look. As the demonic cultivator spoke, his figure flitted towards the green figure. The demon lord didn't say anything. He only stared at the figure in green. He was surprised that the person didn't fear his pressure and gaze, and actually dared to look him in the eyes. This was a strange feeling, but also a novel thing. While the demon master was sizing up Feng Jiu was also sizing him up. From afar, she could not see his face clearly. She only knew that he was wearing a black robe and that his demonic aura was extremely strong. As he stood there in the air, his aura alone was enough to overshadow the group of demonic cultivators behind him. Just by looking at the demon master's aura, she knew that his strength was no longer at the level of an immortal emperor. Well, if he was already an immortal emperor 100 years ago, how could he still be at the same cultivation level 100 years later? However, in that instant, she saw a cold light refract towards her. She narrowed her eyes and saw that the demonic cultivator who was coming towards her was holding a Dharma artifact. The Dharma artifact reflected a dazzling light under the sunlight. "You're Feng Jiu." The sinister voice was filled with shock and suspicion. After the demonic cultivator got closer, he saw the face of the man in green robes clearly and recognized that this person was the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu at a glance. This was because Feng Jiu was gradually becoming more and more famous and powerful. A few of the 10 demons had died at her hands. Therefore, the remaining people were very wary of her. However, he did not expect that Feng Jiu would dare to come here alone to court death. Feng Jiu raised his eyebrows and looked at the devil cultivator. His gaze swept past him. "So what if it's me?" With a wave of her hand, the emerald-edged sword appeared in her palm. "Since you're one of the 10 demons, I'll kill you first." As soon as her voice fell, a figure as fast as a ghost rushed out. The green figure flashed out like a bolt of lightning in the sky, unbelievably fast. Especially the cold light that shot out from the Qing Feng sword in her hand, it was even more frightening. "Ha ha 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 ha. What a reckless Fingzhou." He raised his head and laughed. His eyes narrowed viciously. "Do you really think you're that strong? Invincible? Let me tell you, not to mention that you are here today, even if you are not, my master will personally take your life. However, since I've met you, there's no need for my master to take action. Today, I'll first take your head." Chapter 2466. The demon master saw from afar that the devil cultivator had been killed by the green-robed man before he could even make a move. His pupils constricted as a trace of shock flashed across his eyes. That devil cultivator was one of the 10 demons under him, so he was very clear about his strength. He originally thought that the green-robed man would be killed by his sword, but he never thought that he would be the one to die. To be able to kill a devil cultivator with such strength in one strike, and this person was so young, in an instant, he thought of the ghost Dr. Fingzhou. However, just how strong was this ghost Dr. Fingzhou? How could he kill one of the 10 demons under him in one strike? He suppressed the shock in his heart. He gestured to the devil cultivators behind him, ordering them to attack the Nebula Immortal sect. At the same time, his figure flashed and instantly appeared in front of Fingzhou. Dressed in a black robe, he stood with his hands behind his back. He narrowed his blood-red eyes as he stared at the green-robed figure in front of him. A gloomy voice came out from his mouth, "You are Fingzhou." He looked at Fingzhou with an unfathomable expression. It was unknown what he was thinking, but his eyes were staring at her as if he was examining her. Fingzhou held the Qing Feng sword and pointed it at the ground. Her aura was restrained, and she did not reveal her cultivation at all. Even so, the aura that surged around her body was already not to be underestimated. She did not answer the demon master's question, but only glanced at him. Looking at him up close, other than his blood-red eyes, his face, which was rumored to be covered by a mask, was now revealed. It was the face of a man in his 30s or 40s. His appearance was not particularly outstanding, but it exuded an evil aura. Especially when paired with his blood-red eyes, it made people feel even more dangerous. With a turn of the Qing Feng sword in her hand, her figure flashed out like lightning, bringing with it a sharp killing intent. The powerful sword aura that burst out from the Qing Feng sword was extremely terrifying, but the demon master was not afraid at all. On the contrary, he stared at Fingzhou with interest and revealed a smile. "You want to kill me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand. A stream of air surged out from his hand and blocked Fingzhou's Qing Feng sword. Even the sword qi stopped in mid-air, unable to get close to him. "Can you kill him?" As soon as he said that, the Devil Lord retracted his hand and a stream of air wrapped around the Qing Feng sword. With a tug, the Qing Feng sword in Fingzhou's hand flew out of her hand and flew forward. Swish! Hiss! A sharp sound pierced through the air. It was the sound of the flying azure edge sword. However, the flying azure edge sword pierced a devil cultivator behind him. The defenseless devil cultivator covered the wound that was pierced by the azure edge sword and moved his lips. He was unable to say anything as he fell from the sky. However, the demon master didn't seem to care. It was as if the devil cultivator's life or death didn't matter to him. At this moment, he only had Fingzhou in his eyes. His blood-red eyes burned with a kind of interest for prey. Perhaps it was because no one had ever dared to look him in the eye. No one had ever been as unafraid of him as she was, so he was interested in her. It was as if he had found a fun prey and wanted to imprison her in his cage for him to play with. Chapter 24:68. When the demon master saw this, he raised his head to look at the clouds in the sky, and a strange look flashed across his blood-red eyes. Clearly, he had sensed the floating land above the clouds. Although he had heard that Fingzhou was very powerful and had a group of very strong subordinates, he had never thought that she would have even subdued the floating land. Not only that, but it seemed that she had also subdued the cultivators in the floating land. One must know that the cultivators in that place were not ordinary cultivators. Thinking that those people came from the floating land, their killing intent and fighting strength were far stronger than others, he couldn't help but look at the sect gate. Sure enough, the devil cultivators under his command retreated step by step, and countless of them were killed or injured. As for that group of cultivators, it could be said that each one of them could fight against 10 people, and even one of them could fight against 100 people. In just a few breaths of time, more than half of the devil cultivators under his command had died. Seeing this, he didn't feel that it was a pity, but he looked at Fingzhou in surprise. Those people, and so many of them, how did you subdue them? This woman had really exceeded his expectations. She had actually succeeded in something that others couldn't do. One must know that back then, he had also had the idea of subduing the floating land, but he didn't succeed. Seeing this scene today, he couldn't help but be greatly shocked. Especially this woman called Fingzhou, he had an impulse to capture her and use her for himself. If such a person were to belong to him and be used by him, not to mention this continent, even the entire world would be in his pocket. With a thought, his eyes shot out light, and his figure suddenly flashed, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared beside Fingzhou. Fingzhou, this demon wants you to become my subordinate. Only by becoming his subordinate would she work for him wholeheartedly. Only by becoming his subordinate would she never betray him. Hearing this, Fingzhou was shocked. First, because of the voice that rang in her ears, and second, because of his words. This devil master's movements were so fast that she felt it was inconceivable. Almost instinctively, before she could react, her body had already reacted. She instantly dodged the hand that was grabbing her. After retreating a few meters, she frowned and looked at the devil cultivator. Seeing that the expression in his blood-red eyes did not seem to be fake, her heart could not help but sink. Being targeted by such an abnormally powerful demonic cultivator was definitely not a good thing. In your dreams. She steadied her mind and snorted coldly, releasing the pressure of her strength that she had been suppressing. A powerful chi burst forth from her body, the pressure of her strength and the pressure of the ancient mythological beast intertwined. It was so strong that no one dared to approach her. She held the Qingfeng sword in her hand, and with a swoosh, her green figure shot out like lightning. This time, she was so fast that the demon master couldn't even see her figure clearly. When he saw the cold light and sharp sword chi slash across his neck, his eyes narrowed. He quickly dodged and counterattacked. You're already an immortal emperor. The demon master stared at Fingzhou, who had released all of her aura. The pressure of her strength was very strong, and he could tell at a glance that it belonged to an immortal emperor. An immortal emperor around the age of 20. Ha! This Fengzhou could really be called a demonic genius. Chapter 24:69. Phoenix Star. Phoenix Master. His blood-red eyes stared at Fingzhou with a half-smile. If you're the Phoenix Star, then I'm the Emperor Star. This world will belong to me sooner or later, and so will you. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward. He didn't use any killing moves, as if he wanted to capture Fingzhou alive. However, it was precisely because he didn't use any killing moves that Fengzhou wasn't injured when they exchanged blows. It was just that it was extremely difficult for Fengzhou to injure him. The two exchanged blows. Due to the difference in strength, Fengzhou was increasingly at a disadvantage as the battle dragged on. Seeing that Fengzhou was gradually losing ground, Han Yuanzi appeared out of nowhere and launched a sneak attack from behind. The demon master felt a murderous aura coming from behind him and instinctively dodged a palm strike. When he saw that it was an old man, his blood-red eyes narrowed, and his tone was gloomy and disdainful. A dignified immortal sect actually dares to launch a sneak attack. So what if it's a sneak attack? To deal with a demon like you, as long as I find the opportunity to kill you, I'll be ridding the world of a great evil. Han Yuanzi sneered. His palms rotated in the air, and a Taiji universe diagram appeared in mid-air. He shouted at Fengzhou, "Little Feng, let's join forces. It's rare for this old monster to come out. Even if we can't kill him today, we'll cripple one of his hands." Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes lit up. She didn't speak, but directly attacked. She waved the long sword in her hand, and no one saw or detected it. As she flipped her sleeves, white powder scattered in mid-air. Feng Yi, who was following behind Bai Xiao to watch the battle, looked at the situation of the sect, then looked at Fengzhou, who was fighting the demon master. His little face wrinkled. That demon master is so strong. How can my niece defeat him? What if she gets caught? His little face was full of worry. He couldn't tell how strong the two of them were, but he heard from Bai Xiao that his niece already had the strength of an immortal emperor. One had to know that an immortal emperor was already very powerful in his opinion. However, Bai Xiao also said that the demon master was even stronger, above an immortal emperor. When he heard this, he didn't feel good. The demon master's eyes were blood red, and his demonic cultivation and murderous aura was extremely strong. Feng Yi could feel the uncomfortable demonic qi even from afar. And he couldn't help but worry. Bai Xiao was also worried, but he didn't want Feng Yi to worry, so he comforted him and said, "Don't worry, Fengzhou has an ancient mythical beast, it's very powerful. Besides, she's someone who once killed a strong cultivator. Even if she loses to the demon lord won't gain any advantage. In the end, she will still lose in the end." Fengzhou frowned as he looked at the three people fighting in midair. The old man who joined in later seemed to be quite strong. However, the two of them didn't gain the upper hand even when they joined forces. He couldn't help but worry. What would happen in the end? Bai Xiao opened her mouth. She didn't know what to say to him. He definitely didn't want Fengzhou to lose and fall into the hands of the demon master. However, it was hard to say from the looks of the situation. In particular, he knew that there were only a few people around who could fight against the demon master. Not all of them were like Han Yuanzi, who would risk their lives to help. Chapter 2470. With the help of those cultivators, the Nebula Immortal sect was able to turn defeat into victory, and the situation was already stabilized and under control. However, Fengzhou and Han Yuanzi were unable to gain the slightest advantage even if they joined forces. Especially when the demon lord seemed to be playing with them. He clearly could have killed them, but he didn't. It made people wonder what he was trying to do. When Song Qing saw that Fengzhou and the others were no match for the demon lord, he flew forward to help. However, before he could get close to the demon lord, he saw the demon lord, who was originally staring at Fengzhou, narrow his eyes and turn his head to look at Song Qing. With a turn of his palm, a black stream of air instantly turned into a black smoke wolf's head. With a fierce and savage aura, it suddenly pounced on Song Qing. At the same time, an overwhelming murderous aura and a powerful pressure that belonged to him covered the sky, suppressing Changqing, who was rushing forward. "Be careful!" Fengjiu shouted. Seeing the demon lord's attack that contained overwhelming murderous intent, she knew that if this attack landed on Changqing, he would undoubtedly die. However, it was already impossible for her to go forward to save him. First, her speed was too slow. Second, even if she rushed forward, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to block that attack. Therefore, she immediately shouted, "Fire Phoenix!" A clear voice that contained an ancient might rang out at this moment. Accompanying her voice was the ancient divine beast, the Fire Phoenix. The Fire Phoenix that came out of her space let out a cry. It stretched out its wings and suddenly flew up. It didn't go forward, but instead flapped its wings in midair. A gust of wind whistled out and blocked the demon lord's attack. At the same time, Changqing, who was originally shocked, was blown away by the powerful wind from its wings, several dozen meters away, avoiding the demon lord's pressure. Changqing groaned. He only felt a salty taste in his throat, and a trace of blood spread in his mouth. After he steadied himself, he placed one hand on his chest and raised his head to look at the Fire Phoenix in the sky. Then, he looked at the demon lord, who was covered in murderous aura. His heart surged like waves, fiercely beating against his chest. If it wasn't for the ancient divine beast Fire Phoenix pushing him away, he would have died without a doubt if the Devil Lord's black wolf head had landed on his body. Thinking that even with his strength, he was unable to move an inch under the pressure of the demon master, he was overwhelmed with shock. No wonder he was the demon lord of the demons. His strength had far surpassed everyone present. Even if there were many cultivators protecting the Nebula Immortal sect, as long as he had the intention to destroy it, given his strength and cultivation, even if another group of cultivators like them came, they would not be able to stop him from destroying the sect. Seeing that Changqing had been saved by the Fire Phoenix and avoided that fatal attack, Fengjiu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Her clear eyes fell on Changqing. She said in a deep voice, "Don't go near him. Everyone else, don't go near him. None of you are his match." She was very clear that it would be the same no matter who came. The cultivators under her didn't have the strength to fight against the demon lord. If they went forward to help, they would only end up dead. Chapter 2471. Suddenly, he stared at Fengjiu and revealed a strange and bloodthirsty smile. "Since you care so much about them, then obediently follow this demon lord. Otherwise, this demon lord won't kill you, but will kill them one by one in front of you." Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart sank. Seeing that the demon lord's expression did not seem to be joking, a wave of anger rose in her heart. She mobilized her dark force aura and spiritual energy aura, and the two auras formed two sharp and powerful pillars of qi around her body. She did not speak, only pursing her lips. Turning the anger in her heart into a bloodthirsty murderous aura, her green figure flashed, and in the blink of an eye, she swept out. Her speed was much faster than before, and her figure could not be seen, only a shadow flitting past in front of him. Seeing this, the demon lord was slightly surprised. Just as he was about to take a closer look, he suddenly felt a sharp and cold murderous aura slashing towards his neck. At that moment, although he could not see the sword coming towards him, he instinctively dodged it. However, even so, his neck was still cut by the sharp sword aura. Fresh red blood spurted out, dripping down his neck and onto the black robe. The color could not be seen, but the smell of blood and the wound on his neck caused the demon lord to narrow his eyes. The demon lord's demonic aura intensified, and even his murderous aura was stronger than before. He used his demonic and cold blood-red eyes to stare at the green figure that attacked again. He did not dodge, but only stretched out a finger to wipe the fresh blood from his neck and licked it with his tongue. That expression and appearance made people shudder involuntarily. Narrowing his blood-red eyes, he suddenly flashed forward, reached out from the shadow, and grabbed Fingzhou's shoulder, holding her to his side. His cold and bloodthirsty voice sounded in her ear, "You dare to hurt this demon lord?" The hand holding her shoulder tightened, and Fingzhou felt as if her shoulder was about to be crushed. That kind of pain went straight to her bones, causing her expression to change and cold sweat to seep out. Crack! Sure enough, in the next moment, the bones in her shoulder were broken by him, to the extent that the azure-edged sword in her hand was unable to be drawn back due to the intense pain. It fell from her hand to the ground, piercing into the ground with a shrill sound, the sword hilt trembling slightly. Hiss! Ah! Fingzhou couldn't help but cry out in pain. It turned out that having his bones broken was this painful. But damn it! She had broken her hand and injured her shoulder bone. Even though she was a doctor, she couldn't heal herself. Master! 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 Feng Lass! Fingzhou! Cries of alarm and worry came from all directions. When the people who were some distance away saw this, they couldn't help but rush forward in panic. At this moment, Fingzhou's subordinates, as well as her friends, no longer listened to her words about not coming forward. The fire phoenix screeched and swooped down from the sky, fiercely crashing into the demon lord. All the cultivators rushed forward, all wanting to help her. The densely packed crowd protected her, and one cultivator after another rushed forward to attack the Devil Master with all their might. Han Yuanzi abruptly returned to his senses and quickly rushed forward to support her. Luo Fei, Duan Yi, and the others cried out in alarm and rushed to her side, ignoring the people around them who tried to stop them. Chapter 2472. Aside from Ning Lang, who was originally in the Nebula Immortal sect, the other three had been summoned back to the sect. However, when they found out that the Demon Lord's target was the Nebula Immortal sect, they rushed over. However, they did not expect to see Fingzhou's bones being crushed by the Demon Lord as soon as they arrived. Who was Fingzhou? Ever since they met her, they had never seen her bones being crushed by anyone. However, the Demon Lord of the Demons had reached out and crushed her bones. How hateful! Hiss! Ah! Fingzhou watched as the cultivators under her rushed forward to deal with the Demon Lord. However, they were killed before they could even get close to him. She could not help but shout, "Everyone, back off!" However, no one listened to her because they knew that once they backed off, the Demon Lord would definitely vent his anger on their master. Since that was the case, they might as well protect her now, even if the consequences were death. Fingzhou's hand hung limply by her side. Her green robe was bleeding from her shoulder as if it was seeping out from her crushed bones. She was pulled back and protected by the people around her. She could only watch helplessly. However, when she saw the cultivators being killed one by one in order to protect her, her eyes gradually became bloodshot. She stared at the scene in front of her. She watched as the Demon Lord killed those cultivators with a wave of his hand. Those cultivators were killed before they could even get close to him. "Let go of me." Her voice became calm as if there were no waves or ripples as she spoke faintly. When they heard her words, Han Yuanzi and the others were stunned. However, it was because of this shock that she broke free from their grasp and strode forward in the air. Fingzhou Songming wanted to stop her, but when he saw the expression on her face, he could not help but be stunned. He originally wanted to reach out to grab her hand, but he could not help but stop and watch her move forward. Moreover, when Ning Lang and the others wanted to stop them, he even extended his hand to stop them. "What are you doing? If she wants to stop us, she should stop Fingzhou." She'll die if she stops us. Ning Lang said anxiously. He was about to step forward when Song Ming reached out to stop him. Don't you know who Fengzhou is? How could she stand by and watch her subordinates be humiliated and killed in an instant? Even if she knew it was impossible, she would still try. Hearing this, the three of them glanced at Fengzhou and moved their lips. In the end, they didn't say anything and just let her be. They had been by her side for a year and knew her temperament. If she wanted to do something, even if they tried to stop her, she would still do it. Stand down. Fengzhou's cold voice rang out. Her voice carried the pressure of an ancient divine beast. The moment she spoke, those cultivators couldn't help but pause and look at her. At this moment, their bodies were covered in wounds and dripping with blood. Even so, their fighting spirit did not diminish in the slightest. On the contrary, the blood on their bodies and the murderous aura on their bodies complemented each other, giving off a bloodthirsty and fierce aura. At this moment when no one dared to step forward, these bloodthirsty and savage cultivators stepped forward. This scene caused the faces of the peak masters of the Nebula Immortal sect and above to burn with embarrassment. Chapter 2473. After the cultivator retreated, the fire phoenix flapped its wings and charged forward to attack. It opened its mouth and spat out a stream of flames. The demon master couldn't dodge in time and his black robe was burned. He decisively used his palm as a knife to cut off the corner of his robe that was burning with flames. Seeing that the fire phoenix's flames had formed a stream of air, a black aura emanated from his palm and enveloped the flames. Then, with a speed that was too fast for one to cover their ears, he struck out with the flames. Whoosh! Whoosh! The flames flew through the air and the fire phoenix hurriedly dodged. However, it didn't expect that by the time it dodged the attack, the demon master's palm had already reached its side and fiercely grabbed a handful of its feathers. Hiss. The fire phoenix hissed. The demon master grabbed a handful of its feathers and threw it into the air. In an instant, the fire phoenix's feathers fluttered in the wind. The fire phoenix was dumbfounded and furious. You dare to pluck my feathers? How preposterous! The fire phoenix was infuriated and charged straight at the demon master. The surrounding people watched from afar as the beast and demon fought back and forth. The air was filled with their powerful air currents. In the battle with the fire phoenix, the demon master was hit several times. The black robe on his body gradually tore, revealing the clothes underneath. Watching the battle between the fire phoenix and the demon master, Fengzhou pursed her lips. With a thought, the emerald-edged sword flew back into her hand. She held it with one hand and rejoined the battle with the other. This time, no one tried to stop her. They only watched silently, their hearts aching. No matter how strong she was still a woman. But now, they needed a woman to protect them. However, very quickly, they realized that something was amiss. All of them instantly became spirited and exclaimed softly, "Look, Fengzhou's profound energy aura seems to be changing. It's not just her profound aura. Even her spiritual aura is the same. From the looks of it, she's about to advance again." Han Yuanzi tugged at his beard and exclaimed. He stared blankly at Fengzhou, feeling incredulous. How long had it been since she entered the Immortal Emperor realm? Was he going to advance again? Just as he finished speaking, the clouds in the sky began to churn. A dark cloud covered half the sky, and a faint rumble of thunder could be heard. They only saw Fengzhou pointing his sword at the sky, and a flash of lightning struck the Qingfeng sword in her hand. Following the attack of the sword, the power of the lightning also fiercely struck the demon master. The demon master, who didn't expect her to be able to draw upon the power of heaven and earth, was hit by the attack and was sent flying dozens of meters away with a rumble. Boom. Boom. The sound of two heavenly thunders reverberated, as though they came from the ninth heaven. The sound was so powerful that it caused the ground to tremble slightly. The two heavenly thunders struck Fingzhou's body one after another, and a powerful profound energy aura spread out. Fingzhou, who was originally attacking the Devil Master, closed his eyes at this moment. His entire body stood in mid-air just like that, accepting the tempering of the heavenly thunders. Hiss! She actually advanced during the battle. The people from the various sects sucked in a breath of cold air and cried out in surprise. However, what shocked them even more was what happened next. Chapter 2474. She's venerable by Xian, whose celestial qi cultivation is above that of a martial god. Han Yuanzi muttered in disbelief. He was speechless as he looked at Fingzhou, who was glowing with a dazzling light. She cut a sorry figure, her green robes stained with blood. From afar, she looked like blooming plum blossoms, extremely eye-catching. Her hand hung limply, but at this moment, after being tempered by the third bolt of heavenly lightning, her entire body's meridians and bones seemed to have been reconnected. Even her arm, which had been cut off by the Demon Master, seemed to have a ray of light slowly streaking across it, repairing it. Fengzhou moved her broken arm. She lowered her head slightly and watched the ray of light repair her broken arm. She seemed to be able to faintly hear the sound of bone marrow repairing itself. I don't believe that my Qingfeng sword can't hurt you at all. Feeling that she could move her arm, Fingzhou's cold voice was filled with killing intent. She stared at the demonic cultivator and threw the Qingfeng sword in her hand up and down. In an instant, the Qingfeng sword transformed into dozens of identical swords that hovered above her head. Her hands moved quickly, and the swords circling around her head came out as she whispered. With a whoosh, a flame suddenly appeared, and dozens of swords formed a sword formation to surround and attack. The Demon Master frowned. He waved his hand, wanting to use the black aura to block it. However, he discovered that the azure-edged sword pierced through the black mist with flames. As the flames and the azure-edged sword pierced through, the black mist also disappeared without a trace. The Demon Master didn't expect Fingzhou to be so difficult to deal with. He had been holding back, but now that he saw that the situation wasn't looking good, he didn't hold back anymore. Instead, he attacked with murderous intent. Since you insist on not leaving with me, I'll cripple you. I'll imprison you alive. His voice was cold and sinister. He formed a claw with one hand and attacked Fingzhou, intending to cripple her so that she couldn't escape. Unexpectedly, Fingzhou dodged extremely quickly. The two of them exchanged dozens of blows in mid-air until she couldn't dodge in time and was sent flying by his palm. Bang! Pooh! With a heavy thud, Fingzhou spat out a mouthful of blood and fell back, losing her balance. Fortunately, Master Hunyuan caught her from behind. We can't fight anymore. Hunyuan stared at Fingzhou with a solemn expression. If you continue fighting, your body won't be able to take it. Moreover, there's no way to determine a winner here. Now that he has set his sights on you, you don't have to care about the matters of the Nebula Immortal sect anymore. He originally thought that Fengzhou would definitely be able to deal with the Devil Master. However, he never expected that the Devil Master, who was already an immortal emperor 100 years ago, would become so much stronger today. When Fingzhou was hit by that palm, she felt a dull pain in her chest. She clutched her chest and groaned, even if we can't take it, we still have to fight. If I stop, he won't give up. To this devil cultivator, the life and death of others had nothing to do with him. Even if a devil cultivator under his command died, it wouldn't affect him at all. At this moment, Fengzhou, who was fighting with the Devil Master, didn't know that some distance away, a black figure was flying over on a sword with his hands behind his back. Chapter 2475. Once he was done with his business overseas, he rushed back. As soon as he entered the territory of the mainland, he heard that the demon's demon lord, who had not stepped out of the demon's territory for more than 100 years, was leading a group of demonic cultivators to besiege the Nebula Immortal sect. Especially when Fengzhou would appear in this battle. When he heard this news, he did not stop to rest. He rushed to the territory of the Nebula Immortal sect as soon as possible. He was afraid that Fengzhou would not be able to defeat the Demon Lord and be injured. According to what he knew, the Demon Lord was already at the Immortal Emperor level 100 years ago. After 100 years, his strength would be even higher. With Fengzhou's strength, even with the help of the Fire Phoenix, they would not be a match for the Demon Lord. He knew that those people all thought of her as the star of the Phoenix that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets spoke of as the master of the world. They thought that with her here, they would be able to deal with the demons. However, in his eyes, no matter how strong she was still just a woman that needed someone to protect her. Compared to whether the sect was destroyed or not. Compared to whether the mainland was in chaos. What he was more concerned about was her safety. In order to reach the territory of the Nebula Immortal sect as soon as possible, he moved his hand and put away the flying sword under his feet. The strong spiritual aura in his body rose once again. His figure swept forward and stepped into the air. His black figure turned into a flash and swept across the sky. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared into the distance and was heading towards the Nebula Immortal sect. In the air in front of the Nebula Immortal sect, Hun Yuanzi was hit by the Demon Lord's palm. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell down. When the people below saw this, their hearts sank and they hurriedly went forward to catch him. Pfft. After Hun Yuanzi was caught, he spat out another mouthful of blood. His face turned pale in an instant. His body trembled and he struggled to go forward. Immortal Monarch, you're injured like this. Don't go up. The two peak masters supported him, their brows filled with worry. Hun Yuanzi stared at the Demon Lord above him. He opened his mouth and moved his lips, saying word by word, even though Fengzhou is at the Immortal Emperor level, he can't match the Demon Lord's unfathomable cultivation. If I don't go up and help her, who will? Let me go. Even if I have to risk this old life of mine, I will still go and lend her a hand. He pushed the two people beside him away, but his footsteps swayed slightly. He couldn't even stand steadily and almost fell to the ground. In the air, Fengzhou wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked down at Hun Yuan and said, "Old man, you're already so old. Don't come up. Even if you do, you won't be able to defeat him." Her gaze shifted from the old man to the Devil Lord. Because she had fought with all her strength, she had been injured, and that demon master had also been wounded quite a bit. However, after a fierce battle, she discovered that even though she had fought with all her strength, she had only been able to injure him, and was unable to take his life. Even though she had broken through during the battle, and even though her broken bones had been repaired, her body was still stained with blood and she was in a sorry state. Song Ming, Duan Yi, and the other two wanted to help but were unable to. Their strength was far inferior to Fengzhou and the Demon Lord. When the two of them fought, a powerful pressure was released in the sky. Even if they wanted to get close, they couldn't. They could only watch anxiously from below. Chapter 2476. He looked anxious and wanted nothing more than to rush forward and pull her away. However, when Fingzhou and the Demon Master released their powerful auras, they could not get close no matter how hard they tried. At this moment, they realized that even though they were considered rare experts in the outside world, in the face of a celestial emperor or an expert with unfathomable strength like the Devil Lord, they were no threat at all. They were like newborn babies who could not fight back at all. Ah, Jiao! Stop fighting. Leave quickly. Ning Lang shouted again. When he saw that she was still standing in mid-air as if she was ready to fight again, he could not help but feel anxious again. What was wrong with her? This was not like her usual style. If she knew that she was no match for the Demon Master in the past, she would have slipped away earlier. However, today, she had fought the Demon Master again and again. If this continued, he was afraid that her body would not be able to take it. Song Ming, Duan Yi, and Luo Fei pursed their lips. They did not speak and only stood below and watched. Even though they were anxious and worried, they could only watch. Why don't you try to persuade her? Let her leave quickly. If this continues, she will die. Ning Lang looked anxiously at the three people beside him and said. Duan Yi and Luo Fei looked serious but did not speak. Song Ming sighed softly and said, "It's not that we don't want to persuade her, but we know that she won't leave." He looked at the anxious Ning Lang and said in a low voice, "She knows that as soon as she leaves, everyone here will be killed." Song Ming's gaze shifted to the black-robed Demon Master and said, "This Demon Master's strength is unfathomable. Even Fingzhou, who is at the Immortal Emperor level, could not resist him. Do you think that if Fingzhou escapes, he will vent his anger on these people? Even if the entire Nebula Immortal sect comes out, they will not be able to withstand the Demon Master's monstrous anger." Hearing this, Ning Lang was stunned and immediately reacted. It was no wonder that she would retreat the moment she sensed that something was amiss in the past. But today, she had been guarding the place tightly. Even if she was covered in blood, she refused to leave. It turned out that she knew that once she left, everyone here would be killed. Perhaps, not only the people here, but many more people would die because of this Demon Lord. What do we do then? Are we just going to look at it like that? She's no match for the Devil Master either. Ning Lang was anxious. His mind was in a mess, and he had no idea what to do. I don't know what to do either. Who else on this continent has the ability to fight with the Demon Lord? Song Ming murmured. He had no idea what to do. After all, the Demon Lord was not an ordinary expert. Chapter 2477. A cold killing intent flashed across Fingzhou's eyes. She spun the Qingfeng sword in her hand and transferred spiritual energy from her palm to the Qingfeng sword. A green light flashed across the blade of the Qingfeng sword, and a cold and sharp sword energy shot out from the tip of the sword. A scarlet flame sprang up from the blade with a whoosh and intertwined with the green sword energy. The green figure stepped forward, and the Qingfeng sword, which was pointed diagonally, carried Fingzhou's life source of fire. Suddenly, she let out a clear cry and leaped into the air, slashing out with her sword. The sword energy and flames on the Qingfeng sword emitted a monstrous aura. The sword shadows overlapped, and the sword energy soared into the sky, quickly and fiercely slashing towards the Demon Lord. When the Demon Lord saw the life source of fire, his cold eyes narrowed, and he quickly dodged Fingzhou's attack without any hesitation. However, her attack did not stop, and she attacked again and again. Every strike was fast and fierce, and every strike carried a cold and sharp bloodthirsty aura. The Demon Lord was surprised by the killing intent and fighting intent that shot out from the sword energy and her body. He did not expect that Fingzhou, who was covered in injuries, would still have such a powerful battle strength. He could not dodge in time, and his sword energy mixed with flames attacked him. He instinctively raised his sleeve to block it, but his sleeve was cut off by the sword energy, and the sword energy slashed down, hitting his shoulder. "N!" he groaned. When the sword energy slashed down, he felt that in addition to the cold sword energy of the Qingfeng sword, there was also a burning sensation from the life source of fire. For a moment, the cold and hot alternated, and it was very uncomfortable. Because the wound was so deep that the bone could be seen, the black robe split open, and blood gushed out from the wound. Even though the demon lord had sealed the major acupoints all over his body to stop the bleeding, he could not stop it. As the blood gradually flowed out, his entire arm felt sore and numb. Gradually, this sore and numb feeling turned into numbness, as if he could not feel anything. Feeling the severity of the wound, he gloomily glanced at Fengzhou, who was rushing towards him with her sword. While dodging her fatal attack, he took out a first-class hemostatic elixir from his space and sprinkled it on the wound on his shoulder. At the same time, he swallowed a pill. Miraculously, after he sprinkled the hemostatic elixir on the wound, the blood that gushed out from the wound quickly coagulated and did not flow out again. However, the pain and numbness of his injured arm made his mood even more gloomy. "I did not expect you to have such a battle strength." He stared at Fengzhou with his sinister blood-red sword. Fengzhou was like a bolt of lightning. Before she could react, a force had fiercely sent her flying. "Pooh!" Fengzhou spat out a mouthful of blood. After being sent flying back dozens of meters, she stabilized her swaying body and stared at the demon lord who had slowed down and was walking towards her step by step. "Fengzhou, this demon lord will give you one last chance. Obediently come with this demon lord and become this demon lord's woman. Then, this demon lord will let the people below go. This is your last chance." His blood-red eyes were filled with determination as he stared at the beautiful woman who was still proudly standing in front of him. After this exchange of blows, he actually had an impulse to take her as his own. My woman does not need others to give her a chance. Chapter 2478. When the low voice came from the horizon, Fengzhou couldn't help but tremble. Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned around with surprise and disbelief in her eyes. When she saw the familiar black figure rushing over from afar, the corners of her lips curled up and a smile involuntarily appeared on her lips. Her gaze was fixated on the face of the figure that was gradually approaching. Even though the man had a big beard and looked like an unkempt uncle, she still forgot the pain from the wound on her body. Instead, she broke into a joyful smile. Looking at his appearance, it was obvious that he had rushed back without any rest. As long as she thought that there was such a person, who was so far away, who would always be worried about her, who would rush all the way to her without sleep or rest, just to come to her side, a warm current surged in her heart. This warm current flowed in her heart and spread throughout her body, making her forget the pain from the wounds on her body and only feel happy. She didn't expect that he, who had been away for more than a year, would rush back at this time and come to her side when she needed help the most. When they heard the voice, the people below couldn't help but be startled, and they all looked in the direction of the voice. Except for a few people who knew Xianyuanmos, most people had never seen Xianyuanmos before. Now, when they saw the black figure in the sky approaching at an extremely fast speed, they were all startled, and a trace of doubt and confusion flashed in their eyes. What did he mean by this monarch's woman? Who was this big man with a full beard and whose face couldn't be seen clearly? Did he not want to live anymore? How dare he say such words in front of the demon lord? Wasn't he afraid of being killed by the demon lord? Only a few people saw the bearded man coming from afar, gradually approaching Fengzhou, and suddenly remembered who he was. Their anxious hearts also relaxed when they saw his arrival. It's Xianyuanmos. He's back. Songming murmured, his eyes bursting with joy and expectation. Xianyuan Mo's Yama Lord. His strength was similarly unfathomable, and he was even stronger than Fengjiu in the past. It was said that he had gone to the outer seas more than a year ago, and now that he had returned, he was actually not afraid of the powerful pressure that filled the air from the Devil Master. It was obvious that his strength was definitely not inferior to the Devil Master. However, was it possible? After all, the Devil Lord was already an immortal emperor 100 years ago. 100 years later, his strength was even more unfathomable. Compared to the Devil Lord, who was hundreds of years old, Xianyuan Mo's was only around 30 years old. Did he really have the strength to fight the Devil Lord at such a young age? In the distance, on a mountain peak, Bai Xiao broke into a wide grin when she saw the figure appear. Chapter 2479. The person whom he had held in his hands and placed at the apex of his heart had actually been injured to such an extent. Her green robes were stained with blood and it was a ghastly sight. Her body was covered in countless wounds and every single one of them stung his eyes. Every single one of them felt as if they had cut into his body. Her pale and exhausted face and the happy smile she had shown when she saw him made his heart ache. This stupid woman, does she even know how to take care of herself? For the sake of those people's lives, was it really worth it for her to risk her life to protect them? Could it be that she doesn't know that in my eyes, the entire world is not as important as her? Could it be that she doesn't know that in my eyes, she is the most precious treasure in this world that should be protected? He really wanted to pull her into his arms and hold her tightly, but when he saw the ghastly wounds on her body, he did not dare to do so. He was afraid that if he hugged her, he would press on her wounds and cause her pain. Step by step, he approached her and raised his hand to gently caress her cheek. However, he did not dare to touch the wound on her cheek caused by the chi blade. Does it hurt? His deep voice was filled with his unique magnetism. That voice contained his pity, his heartache, and also his guilt. It hurts. Fengjiu looked at him and replied with a smile. Then, he added, but seeing that you've returned, it doesn't hurt anymore. Hearing this, his heart clenched. His deep voice was apologetic and remorseful, it's my fault. I should have returned earlier. He should not have left her here alone and gone to the outer seas. He should not have been gone for over a year. If he had been by her side, he definitely would not have allowed anyone to hurt her to this extent. When he saw her wounds, the tenderness and heartache in his deep black eyes were quickly covered up. His eyes slowly turned cold, like ice shards. He turned his head and looked at the demon master, who was frowning and staring at them. A murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Go to the side and bandage your wounds. I'll take care of this demonic cultivator. His deep voice carried a sharp aura. A vicious and murderous aura emanated from his body. Once he released his powerful aura, even the demon master, who had been watching him vigilantly, could not help but narrow his eyes. Fengjiu glanced at the demon master and said to Xianyuan Mo's, this person is the demon master. His power is unfathomable. It's all right, I'll kill him. Xianyuan Mo said. His deep voice carried a domineering aura. While the two of them were talking, the demon master's eyes were on the other side. When he saw how intimate Fengjiu and the large bearded man, Flames, his malicious eyes stared at Xianyuan Mo's. His murderous intent, Xianyuan Mo's woman, he said, his voice, my woman's is, your. Hiss. Chapter 2480. Dust and smoke covered the sky, blocking everyone's vision. They could only feel a powerful pressure spreading out from the hole, and a powerful airflow spread out, causing everything within 100 meters to fly out, regardless of whether it was people or objects. In the air, Fengzhou could not hide the shock in her clear eyes as she watched the scene below. She did not expect Mose to have the ability to fiercely knock the demon lord down from the air with one punch. When the dust and smoke gradually dissipated, the scene in the hole also appeared in everyone's line of sight. The black-robed, bearded man punched the chest of the demon lord who was knocked down and lying in the hole. The demon lord's face was pale at this time, and a mouthful of blood overflowed from his mouth. He seemed to be unable to get up, lying there with a muffled groan and gasping for breath. The bearded man in the black robe was covered in a vicious aura. His fist was pressed against the demon lord's chest, and there was still a strong flow of spiritual energy swirling around it. His gaze was cold and eerie, and a bloodthirsty killing intent appeared in his deep eyes. Without giving the demon lord time to breathe, he punched again. This punch was fast and ruthless as it swung from the demon lord's right chin to the left. At the same time, the demon lord also spat out a mouthful of blood, and mixed in with the blood was a tooth that was knocked out by Xianyuan Mose. However, when he was about to cut the demon lord's throat and take his life, a powerful pressure suddenly burst out from the demon lord's body. Seeing the change in the demon lord's aura, Xianyuan Mose immediately let go of his hand and quickly retreated. Just as he retreated, a red flash of light whizzed past the place where he had been standing. Seeing this scene, his deep eyes narrowed, and a light flashed in his hand, and the Xianyuan sword appeared in his hand. The demon lord stood up with one hand covering his chest, which was in pain from his internal organs, and held a blood-red sword in his other hand. He stared gloomily at Xianyuan Mose, and in the next moment, his figure flashed and rushed forward at the speed of light. The sword aura on the blood-red sword shot out like a pillar of blood. When he saw Xianyuan Mose block his attack with the ancient divine sword, the Xianyuan sword, he did not stop and continued to fight. The two black figures, whose strength was equal, fought back and forth in mid-air. The aura of powerhouses filled the air, and the powerful pressure was stronger than before. Perhaps it was because he was caught off guard by Xianyuan Mose's punch in the chest, and his internal organs were injured. At that moment, after the demon lord and Xianyuan Mose exchanged a few dozen blows, his speed gradually slowed down, and even his attacks weakened a little. Of the demon lord knew of the demon lord's attack, and knew that he could not kill him in a short time. Of the demon lord of the Xianyuan sword after blocking the Xianyuan sword of the Xianyuan sword of the Xianyuan heaven's demon. Of the demon to of the demon. Fengzhou, just you wait. This demon will definitely come again. As soon as the demon lord said this, his figure rushed to the sky, and as his figure went further away, his voice gradually weakened. Seeing the demon lord retreat, the remaining injured demonic cultivators also quickly retreated after seeing him leave. Chapter 2481. A moment ago, they were still worried and did not know what to do. The next moment, the bearded man appeared and defeated the demon master, causing him to flee with his tail between his legs. The situation was reversed in an instant. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have known that there was someone who could fight the demon master like this. Their hearts, which had been in turmoil, were all relieved when they saw the demonic cultivators escape. They knew that they had passed the danger. However, the barrier set up by the demon master was still in the sky above the Nebula Immortal sect. Now that the demon master had escaped, who could break the barrier? For a moment, everyone's gaze fell on the bearded man and Fengzhou. They reckoned that only the two of them had the ability to break the barrier. However, compared to the complicated emotions of the crowd, Xianyuan Mose did not pay attention to the others. Instead, he came to Fengzhou's side. "Why didn't you bandage your wounds first?" He frowned and looked at the wounds on her body. It's fine. Fengzhou smiled and looked at the barrier that enveloped the sect. Help them break the barrier. At first, Xianyuan Mose didn't want to bother with the sect's barrier, but when he saw her pale face and smile at him, telling him that it wasn't a problem, and even asking him to help the sect's people undo the barrier, his heart softened. He turned slightly and looked at the barrier that was surging with the power of darkness above the sect. After injecting spiritual energy into the Xianyuan sword in his hand, he attacked the barrier. Break! With a low roar, the Xianyuan sword flew out and pierced through the barrier. When the Xianyuan sword came into contact with the barrier, the two streams of air collided with each other. Shortly after, there was a loud rumble, and the barrier above the sect disappeared from the sky along with the loud rumble. Let's go. I'll take you to bandage your wounds first. He held her hand and was about to walk into the sect. However, after walking for a distance, Fengzhou stopped. Wait a minute. She looked at Han Yuanzi and said to Xianyuan Mose, the old man's injuries aren't light. Let me take a look at him first. As she spoke, she had already descended. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose also followed her to Huanyuan's side. She stepped forward to check Han Yuanzi's pulse and then took out a pill from her space. Take this pill first and go back to recuperate. Don't worry, this old man won't die, Han Yuan said. Under her gaze, he took the pill and swallowed it. Fengzhou still wanted to say something, but Xianyuan Mose picked him up. Hey, what are you doing? She lost her balance and was picked up by him. She let out a low cry and looked at him in shock. How could he carry her in front of so many people? I'll take you to bandage your wounds. Xianyuan Mose said and took the lead to walk into the sect. However, after walking for a distance, he seemed to have thought of something. He stopped and glanced back. In a low and cold voice, he said, "Which place in your sect is the quietest?" At this moment, the sect master who reacted quickly stepped forward and said, "The small courtyard behind Soaring Bamboo Peak is the quietest. Please follow me." The sect master personally led Xianyuan Mose and Fengzhou into the sect. As they left, questions were raised one after another. Chapter 2482. The ghost Dr. Fengzhou seems to have a fiancé called Xianyuan something. Is it Xianyuan Mose? It's said that this person is only the crown prince of the Xianyuan dynasty, one of the 8 great empires in the lower continents. How can he have such a powerful cultivation? Even the Devil Lord is no match for him. This person is too strong. That's right, he's too powerful. The people below were discussing. Other than Song Ming and the others who had reacted and quickly followed into the sect, the rest of the people in the sect also returned to the sect one after another. After the fire phoenix saw that its feathers had been plucked, it flapped its wings and flew back to the sect. No matter what, the Yalma Lord had returned and its master was out of danger. Although it had lost a handful of feathers, at least the Devil Lord had not gained any advantage. On the mountain peak, Feng Yi pulled by Xiao, who was beside him, and said, "Let's go to the sect quickly. I want to go to the sect to see my niece." Okay. Little ancestor, don't be anxious. Bai Xiao comforted him as she stood up and said, "The Yalma Lord has returned. In my opinion, no one will be able to see Fengzhou today. Even if you're anxious to see him now, you probably won't be able to." Feng Yi frowned and asked in confusion, "Why? Why?" Bai Xiao was stunned, then grinned. Naturally, it's because the Yalma Lord is domineering. With him around, who would dare to go near Fengzhou? Even if someone dared to go near, they definitely wouldn't be able to see him. Feng Yi listened, not fully understanding. He looked up and said, "But even so, we still have to go. My niece's body is full of injuries. Don't worry. With the Yama Lord around, everything will be fine. Bai Xiao chuckled and summoned her flying beast to take Feng Yi and Zhao Yang back to the sect. In the sect master personally brought Xianyuan Mo's and Fengzhou to a quiet and secluded courtyard. Just as he was about to enter the courtyard to see if they needed his help, he heard Xianyuan Mo's voice. Leave. No one is to disturb us. Before Zong's foot landed on the ground, he quietly retracted it and replied, All right, please take a rest. I won't disturb you any further. As he spoke, he turned around and left. When they were outside, they naturally followed Xianyuan Mo's instructions to not disturb them. Therefore, those who wanted to go in and see Fengzhou could only wait outside the bamboo forest. In the courtyard inside the bamboo forest, Xianyuan Mo entered the room and closed the door. After placing her on the bed, he was about to take off her clothes when he was stopped by a hand. What are you doing in broad daylight? Fengzhou's eyes were smiling, and her tone was somewhat playful. Xianyuan Mo's face darkened as he glanced at her. You're still in the mood to joke when you're covered in injuries. Don't your wounds hurt? As he spoke, he didn't stop taking off Fengzhou's blood-stained green outer clothes. Fengzhou saw that his movements were gentle and careful, so she didn't stop him and allowed him to take off her outer clothes. After the outer clothes were taken off, the spots of blood on her white inner clothes could be seen even more clearly. She instinctively raised her head to look at the person in front of her. As expected, she saw that his face was dark and his gaze was fixed on the spots of blood on her white inner clothes. When he reached out to take off her inner clothes, Fengzhou smiled and reached out to stop him, saying, You don't have to take off this one. Have you forgotten that I can heal injuries? Chapter 2483. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo nodded. I'll get someone to prepare hot water. As he spoke, his gaze fell on her body again. Are you sure you don't need me to apply medicine? No need, Fengzhou said. My wounds will heal, don't worry. Seeing this, he stood up. I'll be back soon. As he spoke, he walked out. After he left, Fengzhou used the qi of green lotus in her body to heal the wounds on her body. When her entire body was enveloped by the green light, the warm and gentle green light healed the wounds on her body at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the wound on her face was healed by the qi of green lotus, becoming white and flawless. Fengzhou wanted to take a bath and soak in a hot bath. Therefore, after Xianyuan Mo left the courtyard and saw that there was no one outside, he walked out of the bamboo forest. When he saw the crowd standing outside the bamboo forest, he stopped in his tracks. How is Fengzhou? Is she all right? Ning Lang was the first to run forward and ask. She's fine, Xianyuan Mo said, then said to them, Get someone to prepare some hot water. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned and walked back. When Xianyuan Mo returned, Fengzhou was already leaning against the head of the bed, resting. The wounds on her body had been healed by the green lotus in her body. However, after using the power of the green lotus to heal her body, she looked a little tired. She leaned against the head of the bed and closed her eyes to rest. Not long after, she fell into a deep sleep. Xianyuan Mo walked closer and saw that she was already asleep. There was an unconcealable tiredness between her brows. When he saw that she had not even changed out of her blood-stained undergarments, a trace of heartache flashed across his eyes. With her strength and cultivation, she should not have been forced into such a state. However, in order to protect the people of this sect, she had gotten injured all over. It was really worrying. In order not to wake her up, he hit her sleeping acupoint before taking off her blood-stained undergarments. Then, he helped her to sleep on the bed and pulled up the blanket to cover her exposed body. Not long after, a voice came from outside. Honorable sir, the hot water is ready. Xianyuan Mose put down the bed curtain to cover her and walked out. After a while, the large bathtub in the room was filled with water and sprinkled with fresh flower petals. After locking the door, he went to the bed and carried her to the bathtub. He personally washed her. Feng Jiu was in a deep sleep. In a daze, she seemed to feel that she was wrapped in a warm and comfortable hot water. She had no idea that a considerate man had helped her wipe her body and put on her clothes again. He didn't wake her up. He just let her sleep while he sat by the bed and watched her quietly. After not seeing each other for more than a year, he didn't expect to see such a scene when he returned. It was a pity that he did not kill the Devil's Lord. Thinking of the Demon Lord with a pair of blood-red eyes, his eyes turned cold. At the foot of the mountain, Bai Xiao, Feng Yi, and Xiao Yang came up from the foot of the mountain and arrived at the gate of the sect. The sect is temporarily not receiving any guests. The three of you, please go back. Because the main gate of the sect was destroyed, the higher-ups had sent people to guard it to prevent anyone from sneaking into the sect. Chapter 2484. Who are you? Tell me your name. The disciple guarding the sect stared at Bai Xiao and said. Bai Xiao grinned. You won't know me even if I tell you my name. As he spoke, he suddenly blew the beast-taming flute. A male eagle flapped its wings and flew over. He held Feng Yi in one hand and Zhao Yang in the other and leaped onto the eagle. Before the disciple guarding the sect could react, he led them inside. The disciple was shocked by the appearance of the male eagle and didn't react for a moment. When he finally reacted, he saw that they had already entered the sect. Hence, he quickly chased after them and shouted, "Stop them!" Hearing his voice, the disciple quickly rushed forward to stop Bai Xiao and the others. However, before he could get close, he was attacked by the male eagle. For a moment, the sect was in chaos and many people rushed forward to stop them. Not too far away, the fire phoenix was distressed over the loss of a tuft of feathers. It flapped its wings and flew around the mountain peak to pass the time. It only came back to its senses when it heard the sound of the beast-taming flute. Is this a beast? The fire phoenix muttered. It was a little curious. Hence, it flapped its wings and flew outside. When it arrived outside and saw the male eagle flying towards them, it couldn't help but fly forward. Bai Xiao. The fire phoenix tilted its head and looked at Bai Xiao. It recognized Bai Xiao, but the two children behind her were half blocked. It could only see the two children, but it didn't know where they came from. Fire phoenix, look who I brought here. Bai Xiao stared at the fire phoenix as if she was asking for credit. Who is it? The fire phoenix tilted its head and looked at the two children sitting on the male eagle. It stared at the two children and was a little puzzled, as if it was thinking about something. Why do they look so familiar? The fire phoenix stared at the two children in surprise. It flapped its wings and landed on a rockery not far away. It stared at the two children seriously. Feng Yi blinked as he sat innocently on the eagle. His gaze was fixed on the fire phoenix. She was puzzled. Was this her niece's contracted beast? It was said that the fire phoenix was an ancient mythical beast. I'm Zhao Yang. Sitting on the eagle, Zhao Yang stood up and introduced himself. Zhao Yang. Fire Phoenix was stunned for a moment and suddenly jumped up in alarm. Zhao Yang. You said you were Zhao Yang. Then he. Fire Phoenix stared at the figure in front of her. That small figure was exquisite and full of nobility. His eyes were pure and innocent. He looked very similar to Fengjiu. Feng Yi. Fire Phoenix was stunned. She instinctively called out Feng Ye's name. You're still alive. How was this possible? He was clearly dead back then. How could he still be alive? She couldn't believe it. But the two children in front of her were real. They were still alive. We didn't die in the first place. Of course we're alive. Feng Yi pursed his lips. He looked at Fire Phoenix and asked, "How is my niece now? We want to see her." Master is recuperating in the courtyard behind the bamboo forest. Yama Lord is with her. She won't see anyone even if we tell her. But if she knows that you two are still alive, she'll be very happy. As the Fire Phoenix spoke, she immediately led the way. "Come with me. I'll bring you to see them." Chapter 2485. When the people from the other sects saw this, they couldn't help but take a step back. They looked at each other and didn't follow them. They didn't know those people, but this ancient mythical beast was Fengzhou's contracted beast. Since it had said so, they naturally didn't dare to stop them. Under the guidance of the Fire Phoenix, they arrived outside the bamboo forest. When Ning Lang and the others saw them, they called out, "Bai Xiao." Their gazes fell on the two children behind them, and a trace of surprise flashed across their eyes. "Long time no see." Bai Xiao glanced at them and nodded slightly. "Your two children are?" Song Ming asked, his gaze falling on Feng Yi and Zhao Yang. "Hee, you won't believe me if I tell you, but they're from the Feng family. This is Feng Yi, Fengzhou's uncle. The one beside him is Zhao Yang." Bai Xiao turned sideways and looked at the two people behind her. When they heard this, they were stunned and suddenly took a step forward. "Feng Yi. Zhao Yang. Aren't these two? We're still alive. We're not dead." As Feng Yi spoke, he looked at them and asked, "Who are you?" "They were trained by your niece." Later on, they each entered the four major sects. This is Song Ming, Ning Lang, Duan Yi, and Luo Fei. Bai Xiao introduced them to him. "Oh." Feng Yi blinked and sized them up. Then, he looked away and looked at Bai Xiao. "Can we go see my niece now?" Hearing this, Song Ming said, "Fengzhou has many injuries on his body. Maybe he's tired now. How about this? You stay in this sect first. We'll take you to see him tomorrow." Hearing this, Feng Yi thought for a moment and agreed. "All right, let him rest first. I'll go see him tomorrow. Come with me. I'll take you to rest." As Ning Lang spoke, they followed him. He was a disciple of the Nebula Immortal sect and was familiar with this place. It was best for him to help them settle down. Thus, Feng Yi and Zhao Yang followed Ning Lang and left. After they left, Song Ming stepped forward and asked, "Bai Xiao, how did you find Feng Yi and Zhao Yang? These two people are right? They had never seen Feng Yi and Zhao Yang before. They only knew that the two children were dead, but they didn't expect them to be alive and well. It can't be wrong. You don't know, but Feng Yi's personality is really similar to Feng Zhou's. Moreover, don't you think that the cunning between his brows is very similar? But you don't have to worry." Hearing him say this, the few of them nodded, and the trace of worry in their hearts was finally put down. Song Ming smiled and said, "Since you've said so, we won't say anything more. However, I think it should be true. If it's fake, how would they dare to come and see Fengzhou?" They didn't recognize him, but Fengzhou would recognize her little uncle. Although their vitality was greatly damaged in the battle with the demons, and even Fengzhou had suffered a lot of injuries, they still met Feng Yi. They knew that they were still alive. This should be great news for Fingzhou and even for the Feng family. Old Master Feng will be very happy if he knows that his son is still alive. Chapter 2486. The next morning, Fire Phoenix came to the courtyard and peeked in through the window. She saw that Fingzhou was still sleeping on the bed, while Xianyuanmo's had already put on his coat and was walking out. After shaving off his beard, he had regained his handsome and resolute appearance. Without his beard, he looked even younger. He walked out and gently closed the door. He looked at Fire Phoenix and asked, "What's the matter?" "Feng Yi is here. So he's not dead." Fire Phoenix lowered her voice and spoke. She couldn't hide her joy. She looked towards the window and asked, "Is my master still not awake? If she hears this news, she'll be very happy." "Feng Yi." Xianyuanmo's paused and asked, "Is that the old master's youngest son, Feng Yi?" "Are you sure?" "It's him. I'm sure. He hasn't changed at all. He's just grown up a little," Fire Phoenix said confidently. She was confident that she didn't recognize the wrong person. Xianyuanmo's nodded and said, "Go and bring him here." "Okay." Fire Phoenix replied and flapped her wings to fly out. He turned and entered the room. He called out to Fingzhou, "Auzhou, wake up." Fingzhou, who was sleeping soundly, lazily turned over and hugged his waist. She didn't even open her eyes as she said, "Why are you up so early in the morning?" "I want to sleep for a while more." Seeing her rubbing against his waist like a kitten, the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up slightly. He reached out with one hand and stroked her soft black hair. His deep voice carried a pampering tone as he said, "I have good news to tell you. You will definitely be happy after hearing it." "What good news?" "Feng Yi is still alive." As soon as he said this, the person who was lying down suddenly opened her eyes and sat up. Her eyes were filled with nervousness and shock as she stared at him. "What did you say? Who's still alive?" "Feng Yi, the old master's youngest son, your little uncle." He said again and held her hand, "He's still alive. He's waiting outside to see you." Her heart suddenly jumped. She quickly got off the bed and didn't even have time to put on her coat. She was about to run out with her hair down when Xianyuanmo's reached out and grabbed her. "You plan to go out like this?" His gaze fell on her neckline and her hair down. He said helplessly, "Don't worry. He's right outside. He can't run away. Put on your clothes first and wash up before you go see him. Otherwise, he'll be frightened by your appearance." At this point, there was a hint of a smile in his voice. Actually, he didn't want others to see this side of her. The woman in front of him was wearing a white undergarment, and her exquisite figure was faintly discernible. The clothes could not hide her exquisite figure. Coupled with her loose black hair and her beautiful face without any makeup, the woman's charm and tenderness were fully displayed. Her pair of white jade-like feet were not even wearing shoes as she stood on the ground. How could he let someone like her go out and appear in front of those people outside? Hearing his words, Feng Zhou was stunned for a moment. She lowered her head and looked at her current appearance. Then, she tugged at her loose black hair and replied, "Yes, I'll scare him if I go out with my hair disheveled. I'd better wash up before going out." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.